You're listening to Beyond the Campaign, and this is episode number 11. Welcome to Beyond the Campaign. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, podcast publicist, author, and host of this show and Read the Damn Book. Here, you're going to learn from political candidates and from politicians. We're not just going to talk about the issues. We're going to talk about the human beings who are investing themselves in us so that we can invest ourselves in them. This is Beyond the Campaign. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and today I have joining me from North Carolina, Representative Jordan Lopez. We are talking urgently about the potential gerrymandering and redistricting that is going on in North Carolina. They are set to vote next week on it, and it is in retaliation to what's going on in California, but that, as we know, is in retaliation to what happened in Texas. It is a tit for tat moment. And so we are getting the quote unquote breaking news from Representative Lopez, along with what you can do if you are in North Carolina and what the rest of us outside of North Carolina can do to help this and to spread the word. Hello, Representative Lopez.
Hey, Michelle, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I'm so excited to talk to you and to meet you today. You're a breath of fresh air. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation to join.
Let's talk about North Carolina because that is where you hail from and where I hate saying breaking news and because everything is breaking news these days, but North Carolina has their own breaking news right now.
Yeah. But yes, we do. Unfortunately, back in the news and for the second time in an election, or for the second election cycle in a row, I guess I'll say it's for redrawing congressional maps. We just had a redraw in 2023 for the 2024 elections. That cycle saw changes in our congressional maps, our state Senate maps, our state House maps. Actually, the gerrymander district that I was represent currently was created in our 2023 redraw. In that same cycle on the congressional side, North Carolina had a 7 Democrat, 7 Republican map. We are a 50-50 state. Our election results will tell you that 10 times out of 10 if you're looking at presidential. And in that same cycle, they took a map that was 7-7 and turned it into a 10-4 map. And now it's looking like they are going to bring us back to Raleigh next week, not to pass a budget that will be well over 100 days overdue, but instead to draw another map that will likely yield one more Republican seat, taking us from 10-4 to 11-3, and that favors Republicans.
And is this all stemming from what we saw in Texas, or is this just furthering of what they tried to do in 2023 and more of that?
It's probably a little bit of both and a magic third thing. So it definitely is a furthering of what they did in Texas and what our legislative leadership, if you want to call them that, issued in their press statement was that it was in response to California's redraw of their congressional maps. California didn't start this battle. Texas did. Nobody asked Texas to redraw their maps to eliminate 5 Democrats. They chose to take that step on their own. California responded in kind, and so did a couple of other Republican-led states. And I'm blanking on top of my head on, I think it was Missouri and Ohio that are currently exploring those options. And North Carolina decided to jump into the fight. I also think it's a seat. The northeastern part of the state is the district that we believe they're going to try drawing out. North Carolina's first congressional district, represented by Congressman Don Davis. They've been eyeing it for a long time. It's a competitive area. It was already drawn to be a pretty competitive seat as it currently is. And Congressman Davis won because he ran on the better ideas for that district. The people of the first congressional district voted for him, but they still want his seat and don't care what the people of the first congressional district want. But the third magic thing is that Senator Phil Berger is facing a primary challenge in his district. And Phil Berger is the Senate Republican leader, has been the Senate Republican leader for quite some time now, and is arguably one of the most powerful men in the state. But he's also very unpopular in his district. He tried to force a casino on his voters a year or so ago that they didn't ask for, they did not want. And he's been very unpopular there since. And he now has a primary challenger that is making headway against him. And it was rumored about a month ago that he was offering, or that he is trying to redraw these maps as a favor to Donald Trump in an effort to get an endorsement from Trump so that way he can, have a better chance of keeping his seat. Does it work that way or not in practice? I guess only time will tell. But that's the third, I think, caveat to throw in there is that it's also very, very corrupt in nature that he's trying to get an endorsement from the president in return for redrawing these maps.
I think the whole thing is corrupt. Everyone who's aligning with this is afraid of Donald Trump, which I find it funny because I like to keep referring to myself on social media as a middle-aged white woman who really is not afraid of that man. And so why are Republicans afraid of him to the point that they're destroying lives?
Yeah.
And this does essentially destroy lives, because the more Republicans we have in there, the more people who are afraid of Donald Trump, then the more cuts they're doing to the quote unquote Democrat programs like affordable health care and Medicare.
Or
Uh,
SNAP, because
yeah,
eating is partisan nowadays, I guess, you know.
feeding the children is just it's a democratic thing. So
And
it's
you make a good point about fear. And so I mentioned Senator Phil Berger. That's one half of the equation. We have a whole Speaker of the House who, at one point, I would have loved to believe, regardless of his political affiliation, he's a Republican, and I know he supports his party for better or worse, and that's a different conversation. I would have liked to believe that he had some independence left. You know, that he would be willing to stand up and say, "Hey, Senator Berger, you're the one in a primary challenge. You're the one who has to figure that out. We're not going to redraw our maps again, simply to help you out when we can't even, the two of us as two Republican leaders can't even pass a budget together. But I'm going to help you with something to keep your seat." I would have hoped that as a man, he would have been able to say, "Hey, no, that's your fight. You deal with it." But I worry that Speaker Hall is, as you mentioned, afraid of Donald Trump, afraid of the MAGA movement, afraid that if he takes a stand to say, my chamber isn't going to go along with that nonsense. We don't need to do that. We've already redrawn our maps in North Carolina. We've already disenfranchised voters across our state. We're not going to take it any further to benefit one person, two people, if you include the president. But he is, and it's just sad to see that he rolled over that way, and is just going along with the further dismantling of democracy, and again, out of fear.
And so in North Carolina for this, do they just go ahead and do it? Since, in California, we are voting on it.
Mm.
Even though we are combating what Texas did, Governor Newsom still is putting it up to us, the people, to make this decision, which we are not seeing in the other states.
No.
What is it going to look like in North Carolina? Will it be put up to the voters, or is it just going to be up to the politicians?
Unfortunately, it will just be up to the politicians. 48 other of my Democratic colleagues in the House are going to drive up to Raleigh next week to meet our Republican counterparts in the House, and we're going to vote. And in that body where they have a simple majority, they're going to pass that map. The same with the Senate, where they have a supermajority and only need a simple majority to pass these maps. They're going to pass whatever maps they come up with. And unfortunately, in North Carolina, legislative maps, congressional maps, redistricting in general is exempt from the governor's veto. So even though we have a Democratic governor who has already issued a statement in staunch opposition to this redraw, he has no power to stop it. And so, unfortunately, we are in this position where it will be up to us as Democrats in the legislature to be the voice of millions of North Carolinians who are opposed to this map. It's deeply unpopular in North Carolina. It never polls well, gerrymandering in North Carolina. Republicans know that. They just don't care. And it'll be up to us to speak on behalf of millions of not only Democrats, but even Republicans and independents who are opposed to this plan that they're going after to appease one man. It'll be up to us to speak against it. Unfortunately, we just don't have the raw numbers to stop it at a procedural level. And we're asking our voters, our constituents, our neighbors, everybody to pack the legislature out next week because the politicians need to see you. They need to hear you. They need to know that, yes, you may have the power to do it, but you're not going to do it in the dark. You're not going to do it without witnesses. You will be seen. Your faces will be remembered. We are going to make sure you know we're angry about it. And we want people to come and make their voices heard.
So if they can't come to Raleigh next week, what should they do? Should they call their representatives, either way, Democrat or Republican, to let them know? And what can we outside of North Carolina do to help you?
So I will say, if you're in North Carolina and you can't make it to Raleigh next week, definitely reach out to your legislators. I will go out on a limb here and say that if you are represented by a Democratic member of the state Senate or a Democratic member of the state House, you've got our support and you've got our vote against this nonsense that they're going to try next week. If you are represented by a Republican, annoy the crap out of them. Call their office nonstop. send them emails. I was a legislative assistant before. That was my first job out of college. And let me tell you, their staff gets those emails directly to their devices. Members, in some cases, get their emails directly to their devices. I know I do. Annoy the crap out of them because they work for you. We work for you. Make sure that they see a constituent of mine is reaching out and letting me know that they are opposed to this plan. If you are not in North Carolina, and also tell your neighbor to do the same thing. Don't just let it be you and be done. Even if you have to send a template email expressing your opposition to a neighbor of yours, to a friend of yours, to your cousin that lives 2 blocks down the road, like whoever it is, help people get in touch with their legislators. You do it first. You got to put your mask on before you can secure somebody else's mask, but you send your email first and then help somebody else send theirs. If you are not in North Carolina, I'll say if you are in a state like California, though, this effort is already underway. So, if we have friends in Illinois, for example, or friends in Maryland, if you have Democratic representatives representing you, it's time to get in the game. And I hate this race to the bottom mentality. I wish it didn't have to be tit for tat, but we are truly fighting for our democracy right now. And it's time for everybody who is sitting on the sidelines to get in the ring. If you are in a state where maps can be redrawn to benefit Democrats, I would suggest urging your legislators to do the same, because unfortunately, we are in a position where fighting fire has to be met with fire, and it can't be met with letters or strong press releases that just say we don't like this. It needs action. And if you are in a state where you can demand that action, I strongly encourage you to do so.
I appreciate that. I want to get to know you too while I have you. You said that you were a legislative aide out of college. What made you run for office? Was this always a dream? What got you interested in politics? Give me all the background.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I won't say that being an elected official was always the dream, but being involved in the public sector has always been a goal of mine, or has always been a passion of mine, I'll say. My first job at the legislature here in North Carolina, I worked for a state senator, another one of my Mecklenburg County colleagues now. We now get to serve together, even though he's in the other chamber, and I think it's a really cool full circle moment. I then went on to be a policy analyst for former Governor Roy Cooper. He had a rural program that I got to do some great work with across the state. I went to grad school for a master's of public administration with a focus on urban management, because ultimately, at one point, and maybe one day, I wanted to be a city manager. Here in North Carolina, where we have many, mayor manager forms of government, the city council will set the policy, and it's up for the manager to actually do the work of bringing that policy to life. And the potential to impact every aspect of city government that also impacts every aspect of most of our residents' lives has always been really fascinating to me, because you have the power to really truly create a city for everybody on behalf of your council. And so that was kind of the goal. When I moved back to Charlotte after I finished my time in Raleigh at the as being a legislative staffer, I got hyper involved at the local level with nonprofits here in the East Charlotte area where I represent, with our Charlotte Mecklenburg Black Political Caucus as a GOTV committee chair, and in several other ways. And when I mentioned before, they redrew our maps in 2023. This district that I now represent was a newly created one, had no representative. It was open, and got some calls from folks that I've done work with here in the community, folks across the county that just knew that I was passionate about this work, passionate about this community, and they were really encouraging for me to run for it. I said no, believe it or not, for the first couple of times. Did not think I was ready financially or even just professionally, but when you get encouraged by some of the folks who were reaching out to me, and when I was having conversations with people who would go on to become my constituents about what they want to see in a representative, do you think I'd make a good one? And the answer was more often than not, yes. It becomes hard to say no. And so I decided to jump in, and we're now about 10 months into it, and still trying to keep fighting a good fight.
This is quite the first term for you.
It is. I joke around, whereas it's not really even a joke. I oftentimes say it's the wildest time to have gotten into politics. It's nothing like what I thought I would be getting myself into. Candidly, I thought we were going to have a very different national outlook at the end of last year's elections, and thought that, while things at the state level here in North Carolina may have been, I don't want to say similar, but we knew our legislature, because we have gerrymandered legislative maps, were going to be controlled by one party or the other. We thought nationally the environment may require some of our legislative leaders to be a bit more realistic and pragmatic in their approach. But with the election of the current guy in the White House, I mean, they have gone far to the right and have believe it or not, had one of the most unproductive, actually it's easy to believe, this year has been the most unproductive legislative session in North Carolina's General Assembly history, simply because they focus on culture war stuff. They focus on bulking their chests out and how can we be the biggest, most bravado-esque men that we possibly can be? How do we make life harder for North Carolinians and not easier? And our governor, thankfully, Governor Stein has the ability to veto a lot of these bad bills. And now we're just focused on upholding these vetoes to ensure that the radical Republicans in Raleigh don't have their way with our state, because we still have some safeguards in place.
The masculinity definition has really changed with our current administration. You would think that it would be a masculine thing to care for others and that kind of a thing, but instead we are seeing text messages come to light, and it's unbelievable. And as a mom, I ask, where are their mothers? Especially if we're going to refer to them as boys, then their mothers should be somewhere too, to keep them straight and say, I did not bring you up to be this way.
I 110% agree. And it's been fascinating. As you mentioned, the definition of masculinity, it's been one of those things that as I've taken in my experience at the legislature, it's just in aggregate, when you look at the political environment, it's really interesting to see how the perception of what being a man looks like, or what masculinity looks like, and it's become cosplay almost. You see the Secretary of Defense, walking around and doing push-ups every morning as if that's what people care to see their Secretary of Defense doing. You see the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, and granted, I don't think she's going for a show of masculinity, but more for a show of force, but walking around in a bulletproof vest, even though she's 200 yards away from protesters and protected by a Secret Service detail. You see these folks who just want to portray this war fighter, an operator mentality, and it's like, you're not. You're a suit-wearing bureaucrat, and you're in this position to serve your country, not to serve yourself, not to be a movie star, not to be shooting commercials that are promoting bravado. Like you're supposed to be serving and leading and making people's lives better. But as I've come to just understand and accept, is that they're not interested in making lives better. They're interested in preserving and protecting their power.
As my 10-year-old likes to say, they're not for the people.
Absolutely.
And we are a household that is for the people. Anytime I have somebody come on the show, my son goes, are they for the people? And I go, well, we don't interview people who aren't for the people. So
your 10-year-old sounds incredibly intelligent, probably more in tune than our leaders at the national level are right now. So
I kind of think so. Yeah, he's a bright one. Well, Representative Lopez, I appreciate you so much. I thank you for standing up for the people of North Carolina and for all of us for doing this job that can be one of the most thankless jobs that there is. I appreciate you. Where can everybody follow you so they can keep up to date on all of this and what's going on?
Yes, absolutely. So I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is my more professional and just me account. It's Jordan, JORDAN LOPEZ _. Our campaign account is Lopez, LOPEZ, the number 4 NC. We have a Twitter that is Jordan A Lopez _ or X, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Twitter. But those are the social media accounts. You can follow me there. I'd love to have you guys join Team Lopez. Even if you are not in North Carolina, your support means the world. Even all the way from California, Michelle, it means a lot that you are watching, that you are paying attention, that you are trying to ensure that we as legislators can get our word out and inform people across the country, because what happens here in North Carolina will affect the rest of the country. I have to remind people all the time that North Carolina is the reason in a house that is controlled by 219 Republicans. North Carolina is the reason why they have a majority, because we redrew our maps in 2023 for the 2024 elections. What happens here affects everybody. What happens there affects everybody. And it's important for us to be staying connected. So I really appreciate you for doing what you're doing too.
Thank you. It's a team effort.
Absolutely.
So we'll keep everybody updated, and I'm already following you. So we'll be collaborating shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.